Okay, we're gonna get started. We have 100 plus people online as well. Welcome. For those who are not part of the business forum, Dave Marchick, I'm the dean here. Thank you for coming. I want to recognize a few. We have about 100 people online, which is great as well, faculty from all over campus. We also have several members of the board of trustees online. We have a bunch of Kogod advisory committee members, our sustainability advisory. So a lot of interest in this session. We even had a couple of students that were doing tours that were interested in AI. So I just both interested in American University. President Kerwin is here. Thank you for being here. Provost Wilkins, thank you for being here. Priya Patel in the Provost's office. And then it's Charlie's not here, right? Okay. So I'm going to kick it off, and we have a really great program for you today. Also, we have a reporter, Lindsay Ellis from the Wall Street Journal here, and she is writing a story. So if you don't want to be quoted. Where's Frank? All right, we're not going to call on Frank. Okay. She could cover everything except for Rachel Lyons for a variety of regulatory and other reasons. She can only be quoted as a finance executive, and she can't quote the firm. And I think Poets and Quants, John Byrne, the editor of Poets and Quants, is also watching online. So those are the rules. Okay, so there were 4 conversations that really led us to say we have to infuse AI into everything we do for the benefit of students. Lots of universities all across the campus are using AI in their research, as are we. Parthivan did a survey, and about a quarter of our faculty, louder, okay, about a quarter of our faculty, there's a mic, so about a quarter of our faculty are using AI already, okay. This is a student-focused initiative. It's about training and preparing our students to be more competitive in the workplace, okay? But we have the president of Google here who quoted his boss and said, AI is more profound than fire and electricity. Pretty bold statement. Then the head of a VC that invests only in AI told our students, you're not going to be replaced by AI, but you'll be replaced by someone who knows AI if you don't know AI. And then I took Rachel to lunch one day, Rachel Lyons, who's a 26-year-old Kogod grad who works at Carlisle. She said, AI is doing what I did when I was 22 at Carlisle. Okay. And then we had a discussion of the Kogod advisory committee, and it was an hour plus. Guan Ho Lee led it. It was great. But basically the sum of that discussion was run, don't walk. Okay. So I went to Parthivan David, our senior associate dean, and I said, all right, we got to do something, Parthivan. And what did he say? What'd you say? Let's form a committee. And I said, come on, Parthivan. So, Parthivan. Anybody recognize that body? It's the Rock. He gave the committee 6 weeks. Okay, no committee at any university has ever done anything in 6 weeks, but they did. Part of what they did is they surveyed our faculty. A third of our faculty use AI to prepare for their classes. A third use it in classes, but 3/4, you can hear me all right? 3/4 said they want to know more. So here's the committee. They met for the first time January 17th. They presented to Parthivan, Iman, Casey, and me March 5th, and we rolled this out March 26th. That's lightning speed. Okay, not academic speed, lightning speed. Okay. So here's the committee. Thank you very much. Aran Carmel chaired it. Thank you very much, this committee. Really great work. What is it? There's 6 elements. Infuse AI throughout the curriculum. In the starting fall of next year, we'll have more than 20 classes that have AI in the curriculum. Core courses, elective courses, graduate, undergraduate. Iman's even planning an AI infusion for orientation when students come on campus. Okay. Training the faculty and staff, thanks to Angela Virtue. Certificates and badges. We want to give our students the ability to put certificates and badges that they know AI on their resume so they get internships and jobs. Hiring new faculty. We've hired 4 new faculty so far that are AI ML experts, and we'll do more if we get a budget from Provost Wilkins. AI for scholarship. Is that a good strategy, Neil?
It used to be.
Okay. And then Octavian, where's Octavian? Okay. Octavian has been really great at using, and he runs the financial services lab. He's been great at getting discount software. So he's going to work with our library to get faculty and students tools, AI tools.
We don't know anything yet.
So we don't know. So I would say, like, we all need to learn. I'm the biggest Luddite in the room. I want to tell you, I just got this new technology last week, which is okay, so here's our speakers today. Ira Rubenstein and I went to college together. He was one of those people in college that you knew was going to be successful. After college, he wanted to go to the USC Film School. They have this program called the Pete Start program. They only let 20 people in a year. He applied 4 times before he got in, and then he got in. Today, if you look at that film school, he's on the most distinguished alumni, along with John Wayne and the comedian Will Ferrell. Okay.
I was funny though.
So he's the senior vice. He runs marketing for PBS. He ran marketing for Sony, Fox, Marvel before. He was part of the team that won an Oscar this year for documentary filmmaking. He's a member of the Motion Picture Academy. Most importantly, he's an adjunct faculty at here, thanks to Ron Hill, teaching a digital marketing course. That's pretty cool for our students to be able to learn from someone that's distinguished. Mikey works with Ira, and he's in charge of innovation for PBS. You'll hear, he's really impressive. Rachel Lyons from New Jersey came to AU. She got into all the high-ranked schools, but she came here because AU gave her a scholarship, changed her life. And so she promised that when she runs Carlisle, she'll give a building. So 20 years. Okay. And then Michael Shavira is also just an inspirational person to me. He grew up in Wyoming. His dad was an immigrant from Mexico who worked as a ranch hand in Wyoming, still works as a ranch hand. Michael went to University of Wyoming, then went into the military intelligence, got a master's degree, then came to AU for a master's in finance. While he was here, he started a business in military intelligence, and now that business has over $100 million of sales, and he's on our advisory committee, and he uses AI every day. So we have a fantastic program, and I'm going to turn over to Professor Virtue, who is the AI teaching fellow for the Kogod School of Business.
All right, thank you, and thank you all for coming out today. So before we jump into all of our wonderful speakers today, I really want to just set the tone and talk about all of the training events and why we're doing it and what you all will get out of it. So the first event besides today is going to be next week. And in next week's event, we're going to bring Professor Derek Cockburn back into this room at the same exact time, so you all better be here. And he's going to do a whole lecture and a whole workshop on prompt engineering. And the reason why we're going to have this workshop where you all can hands-on write queries, not queries is the wrong word, but you all can play with ChatGPT and other AI tools, and we're going to learn how we can get more power out of our prompts. And the reason why we're doing this is I feel, myself included, when I was first learning, I just used AI as another Google. Let's throw in a very generic Google search and let's see what comes out of it. And to be honest with you, we can do so much better. We can be a lot more creative, and we can have the AI work for our behalf. So next week's lecture is going to be a hands-on workshop. Bring your laptops, bring your computers. You'll get into all of the AIs. and you'll get to apply all of the things that we talk about today from all of our speakers. And you can start working through different ways to incorporate it into our curriculum. The next event that we are going to be starting is something called AI Fridays. And the whole idea behind these AI Fridays is we'll have a space to gather and build community once a month. It'll be on the second Friday of every month. I know commencement is the second Friday in May. Maybe that one will be a Thursday, but you all get the idea. And this is a very low stakes meeting where we all can gather, build community, talk about what we've learned, what we've tried, what we are trying to do, and just start building the connections amongst our faculty and staff in a very collaborative environment. The third thing that we're working towards is I'm partnering with all of our department chairs and all of our staff units to bring in more experts from the industry in your specific departments to discuss how they're using AI, what tools should we be teaching to our students, what should we be incorporating into the classroom. So today's event is going to be this big kickoff while we have all of these recurring events to really reinforce the changing landscape of AI. So that is my spiel. I will now get started with our PBS folks of Ira and Mikey and turn it over to them to explain how they're using it in marketing and other ways. Go ahead.
Of course, now my PowerPoint now, my. Really? Sorry. 1 second. There it is. Why is it not coming up on the shirts? Really like it. There it is.
There you go. You got it.
Okay, thank you all. First, I just want to thank Dave, for, including me, today, and also just, for reaching out last August and said, hey, you want to teach a digital marketing class? I said, sure. Then I found out from Ron, yeah, it's 2 weeks later. We made it. It was really one of the best experiences. I have so much respect for all of you who teach full-time. My father's a professor, retired. It's something I've always wanted to do, and I just love this community. You've all been so supportive. I can't thank you enough. Yes, Dave and I go back to UC San Diego, and I'll say the same thing about, I knew Dave was gonna be super successful too. A fun fact, I ran Dave's student body president campaign. And we won. And I was also on one of the first trips to DC with Dave. We came to an APAC meeting, and I knew right then and there Dave was coming to DC. And we've stayed in touch over the years. And when I moved to DC, Dave was one of the first guys I called. And I just can't thank him enough for all the support. Okay, so what the heck today? So I oversee all digital marketing, distribution at PBS. So my team is the broadcast operations, digital operations, our apps, data, research, as well as marketing and creative marketing, et cetera. And so as part of our team, I have Mikey here who runs up one of my most important groups, I feel, and he knows I say this all the time. It's our R&D group. And what they do is anything that's bright and shiny, I have them work on, because I want the team focused on the day-to-day. And there's so many things coming in digital at you all the time that I can just throw it to Mikey. I go, Mikey, is there something here? Check it out and make a fast prototype, et cetera. And so Mikey's really been at the forefront of everything that we're doing in AI and doing some of the fast prototypes. And so today, what I thought we would do is have Mikey kind of level set, because I'm sure in this room, there's all sorts of different knowledge levels of what's AI, what's Gen AI, what's machine learning. And so we're going to level set that. And then I'll talk a little bit exactly how we're using it at PBS in the real world. So throw it to Mikey.
Sounds good. Thanks, Ira. Hey, everyone, Mikey Centrella. Show of hands, how many people have used ChatGPT themselves? Oh, wow, this is great. A lot of you. Wonderful. And I think we can go pretty quick. Did you find it useful? Yes or no? Yes. Helpful? Scary? 5 times as many Americans are scared of AI than excited about it. That's a stat from Axios. But there's a big difference between AI and generative AI. And I think we all understand that, but just to level set, let's go through some quick definitions. So AI is not new. It's been around as long as public media, over 50 years, and it's made up of data, algorithms, logic, machine learning. It's sort of the overarching term that encapsulates a lot of other things. And the way I like to break it out into little categories is that artificial intelligence as a whole predicts, that's what it's doing. Machine learning is more of a processing function, and generative AI can produce. So it's a simulation of human intelligence, programmed to think and learn like us. And the computers that play chess, still do today, are early examples of this. But so is adaptive cruise control. When you drive your car, if it's a self-driving car or it has adaptive cruise control, it's using 3 types of AI. Image recognition to see the car in front of it. It's also deep learning to power the vehicle. And it's using a little bit of computer vision as well. Machine learning is much more mathematical, statistical. Obviously, you do sort of analysis like these where you might predict hurricanes. And it's also pretty old. It's been used a lot in the past. It's still being used today. And it is a little bit more precise. It can certainly predict, but it is more human controlled and human led. And generative AI, which is really what we're going to talk about a lot today, is recently blossomed thanks to 2017 new transformer, generative pre-trained transformers, so GPT stands for. And that has really allowed us to create new content from what it's been trained against, right? So that's text or image or video, as we're all starting to see. And it interacts with us in a conversational way, which is really different than any style of computing that we've ever had in the past, where we can use natural language processing to analyze something and provide context to get like a vector output. So after training their data, which is sort of like a library of content, basically the LLM, the large language learning model, can read everything in there and summarize it really fast. And so what you're looking at on the screen is essentially what happens. It's using a probabilistic model to determine what the next word in the sentence is by rank. And so that's all it's doing is math. It's ranking things together. And that's a very basic sense of how it works, but it's not human. So just to be clear, generative AI is not human. It's meant to mimic our way of thinking, but our brain is way more impressive. 86 billion neurons, 100 trillion connections. AI can't replicate that. AI can't replicate this. Y'all are looking at me, you see my face. AI can't do that, and never will be able to do that. It can't diffuse conflict like humans diffuse conflict. It can't complement skill sets like I compliment Ira sometimes. It doesn't forgive. It doesn't learn the way we learn. It doesn't smell. Next slide. But the other really important thing to say is that generative AI is also not great at everything. It's not your final draft. Do not just put something in ChatGPT and publish it. Think of it like as a B- output, right? It can help us certainly get through the mundane, but it's not precise, and it can't be precise because it's only trained upon a subset, right? So if you want something with high expertise and excellent performance, generative AI is not your solution. So when you're building your solutions or when you're thinking about using it for whatever you're using it for, keep that in mind. I recently heard a quote, I went to South by Southwest, that generative AI is like consulting an island full of drunk people. Overly confident in their decisions, despite not being an expert or without having access to the most up-to-date info or understanding all aspects of the complexity. So that's how generative AI works in the real world. It's kind of okay. Yeah, it can classify things on your phone, like when you get these spam phone calls and you see the transcription real quick and you know you shouldn't have answered it or you're glad you didn't. Maybe didn't get all the words right, but it gets you good enough so you know what to do or what not to do. But you don't want to use it in the hospital for clinical decisions. And there's 2 parts to that problem, which we can get into later. Do you want to do this one?
Okay. We'll reverse that. So how we're using it at PBS and why. So the why is really to automate tasks. It's to personalize for consumer journeys and consumer interaction experiences on our apps. We want to enhance decision-making. We want to free staff's time. We want to make them more productive, more effective. And that enables us all to focus on our mission. And of course, at a place like PBS, a nonprofit, resources are scarce. And so the more efficient we can make the team, the better it is. You're going to be like, oh, perfect. So one of the ways is through our media supply chain. So I don't want to get too technical, but media supply chain is basically how you get your product from the glass to the glass. So how you get it from the camera all the way to the TV set or phone or what have you. And so we use AI in the processing and packaging of the material to streamline the workflow, process the metadata and things like that. And then we'll distribute that data to things like IMDb, TV guides, things like that. It helps our tech staff be more efficient and less, again, hands-on where the AI can do. The PBS Kids team is doing some really fascinating things in AI in partnership with some universities and research. So what they're doing is they're using testing for assisting deciphering audio conversations with kids. And so what they'll do is they'll play a clip and then they'll have the child speak back. And you can imagine a toddler speaking, you gotta understand that. But we didn't bring the video, but it's really cool to see what they're doing. But they'll watch and you can see is the child grasping the concept that, Lionel in the Loop is trying to teach them. And so this is kind of like, again, an experimental stage, but I think there'll be more uses for kids AI. And again, when you get to that, that's where all the data and the privacy things people are very concerned about. But again, we're PBS and people trust us. We take that very, very seriously. I can have a whole talk about what we do for kids, but you'll notice like on the PBS app and our website, the kids is separate. There's no tracking or anything, but that's another story. So our recommendation engine is the team that Mikey built. Mikey did a fast prototype on the recommendation engine using machine learning and AI. And it was to build a recommendation for viewers so that we at scale could personalize their experience. So it's live today across 20 of our different platforms. We have apps on Roku, Amazon, Android, Apple, etc. And so what that enables is your personalized viewing of what you're going to watch. It might be different than, say, Dave's personalized viewing at PBS would be different than mine, but it's to surface the content. And ours is a little bit more complicated because we have 150 different stations. So if you're here and you're watching WIDA, we're going to pull in the WIDA local shows. If you're MPT at Maryland, we'll pull in the Maryland local shows. And so that way local content can get surfaced with the national content. And so we're seeing already that this is driving increased views, increased engagement, increased time with the app, which is exactly what we want. So now, generative AI. So how are we using generative AI? So we started experimenting with these tools and testing the capabilities of different models and explored possibilities of some use cases. So, but it's important to stress that these things are just like gets you, as Mikey said, part of the way there. So go to the next one. This is a story I shared with Dave, and he liked it a lot and said it a lot. We had a film for Ken Burns, so it was American Buffalo. And the film is not really about the buffalo, it's about the indigenous people and how we treated indigenous people in the buffalo and how they're tied together. So as a marketer, I know we have marketing professors here, we were trying to convey in an image that this is more than just about the buffalo. So if you just use an image of a buffalo, people wouldn't get that. So my idea was, how can I use indigenous people art in the shape of a buffalo to bring that there's something more here? And in the old days of marketing, you would go to a company, you'd say, this is my idea, do a bunch of mock-ups, you pay a bunch of money, they give you the mock-ups. I wanted to skip that step. And so we went in and I just said on Midjourney, use some indigenous people art in a buffalo and in a Ken Burns style, and give me something that I can then give to the shop. And so that's what we did. And we got some, different kinds of art and things. And then finally, the group, my creative group with the vendor came up with the final artwork. And this is actually an artist who, an indigenous artist, and that's his art. I forget this name, but it worked out really, really well. And that's what the art, you saw everything. And even down to always point out, because there's marketing geeks here, Ken always has the red line. If you ever see any of Ken's films, so again, we integrated the art into that. So other ways we're using it in marketing specifically is brand voice. And I know we have brand marketers in the room. And so when you have a brand and you have your brand voice, in the past, you had to train your staff to speak in the brand voice. Well, Mikey had the ideas, what could we train our AI model to speak in the brand voice and then actually get a start? And so simply by uploading the brand voice guidelines, we're able to write 20 taglines for a nature show. And then again, it gets you 80% of the way there, then the human can take over. And so I think you're starting to see how much time we're saving and how much staff time we're saving by doing that. And then now go back to
Speaking
Mikey.
of time, there's not much time left for us. So I'm
Yes.
going to go through a lot more examples really fast. And we won't have time to hit up considerations like bias, accuracy, transparency, or legal considerations, but maybe in Q&A we can touch on some of that. So other things that we're doing with generative AI as tests, creating metadata. Generative AI is really great at this. So this could help for alt tags, descriptions, improve SEO and site accessibility. Simply, you just upload an image to a captioning tool like this, and it'll tell you what it's seeing using image recognition. It takes only a second, and it gets you the majority of the way there. Chatbots, clearly you've seen them or interacted with them, but RAG, or retrieval augmented generation, is a type of AI, generative AI, that is very controlled. So you may have heard the word hallucinations. I can explain what that means later, but a way to control that a little bit is to use a very strict subset of understanding that the LLM can search from, and then it will respond with annotations and links directly to its sources. So not only will it have more accuracy in both of its summary and its output, but it will also give you direct links to where it got that information from. So we're using RAG as chatbot tools for our internal staff to stage the stations that Ira mentioned, come to PBS sites and search for things, and this will help them find it faster. Quiz creation, another idea that we've had is to use an LLM, upload all the show transcriptions as well as the descriptions, and then have an LLM create quiz questions. And it does a really fantastic job of doing that, tailoring it with the appropriate imagery. We can just put it in, have our designers and the creative team put it in the front end really simply. But of course, we've got to take that human touch and make sure that these are correct before we publish it and get it out the door. Search enhancement. So one of the big things behind large language models is vectors. The idea of different planes, not just X, Y axes, but all these different axes. So if you search for cat, playful cat, certainly you might get other kinds of cats or certain cat breeds, but you could also get a description like playful cat and dog or playful cat in a hat. And that's what a vector does. A vector essentially assigns a numerical identification and relates it to different planes. And so we're looking at how we can enhance our own search internal tools on our apps and our website. Dynamic recaps, you've probably seen this on other platforms. Again, generative AI is really great at summary. It can select which clips that would be good to summarize episode 1 or all of season 1, as well as even write the text. And it does a pretty good job. Last time on Grandchester, a man of God faced shame with Cindy's affections for Amanda were revealed at her engagement party. I mean, that's pretty good. Right? It's like, sounds really good. Obviously, we still want to add our human touch, make sure our copywriters look at that text, and then the videos themselves will need transitions. But this could speed up cloud editing. Having producers produce this and then do this in the cloud and then put it out as faster helps us get more content out the door. And so does screening content. So generative AI, as I mentioned, is really good at looking at something and evaluating it. And we can't actually get content out fast enough without having to look at it by humans. So if something has some tones of racism or animal violence or sexism, we want to know that, and generative AI can tell us that, alert us that, and then we can go back to the producers and say, hey, we need to do another re-edit. Fundraising is another really important area that we're looking at with generative AI. Fundraising modeling is mostly done with machine learning. We've got some folks in the system at some member stations who have used it to help re-engage donors who may need to be reactivated or have lapsed, and they can, machine learning can analyze your file and say, this would be a good time. But with generative AI, you can do things with channel marketing mix, right? The content that you serve to those people can be automated and triggered, and you can do it just again by asking them to chat. And that's it.
And that's it. Thank you.
All right, and up next, we have Rachel Lyons coming up, and she's gonna actually give us a demo of the Hebia platform for a financial perspective.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Lyons, and I'm a 2020 graduate from Kogod. It's so great to see so many of my former professors, so I'm looking forward to sharing something with you today. So currently, I'm an underwriter in the private credit team of the Carlyle Group. And just at a high level, what my role is evaluating private equity-backed businesses and helping to make decisions from a credit perspective. I also monitor portfolio companies where I track quarterly performance, help evaluate exit opportunities, and also work on incremental debt offerings. So the technology that we use is called Hebia, and it's an artificial intelligence search engine. So currently, we've had Hebia at the firm for about a year now, and I'm one of the power users who tries to use it in my everyday. I kind of foresee the industry as if you're not using it, you're going to be behind. So trying to get up the curve, as well as work with our Hebia engineers to kind of teach them more about our role and how we can start catering to us. So currently Hebia is rolled out within 40 financial institutions across Wall Street. It's mostly being rolled out in terms of small group beta testing versus a full firm-wide rollout. And the reason being because this technology is so new and we're also becoming new users, so we're not quite sure how to integrate it. And I have a couple use cases that I'd like to walk you through today and would also touch on the potential that we foresee this platform as well. So what I currently have up on my screen is called Matrix. If you think about technology right now, search and retrieval functions in documents, you would do like a control F or control search function. You type in a word and then it'll highlight throughout the document. And then you click to that word throughout the document. So what Matrix does is able to search and retrieve information across documents and then able to interpret and understand what is in those files and respond to your specific prompts. So I'll demo that as well. As you can see here, we have a template library that's rolled out for our group specifically, but then also broader templates that are more firm-wide. And what Hebia realized, and also us as users, was that the greatest barrier to adoption was people just don't know what to use this technology for and how to integrate it into their day-to-day. So I'm going to demo that on our earnings call summary transcript. So we'll click here. And then it has some pre-filled columns, but I'm also able to add specific columns if I wanted to look at capital expenditures or just cost trends over time. So I do have flexibility to edit as well. We go quickly to adding documents. For today, I'm just going to drop in Amazon. So it pre-loaded into the system earnings transcripts and also 10Qs and 10Ks going back to 2020, which was inputted into the system from Hebia. For me, when I look at quarterly reporting on my portfolio companies, I like to ask myself whether impacts to the business are unique to that business or broader industry trends. So I'll look across the industry at comps in the space to see whether I can summarize that for my team or point out something unique about that company that I need to flag. So we're adding these 27 documents. And now Hebia is loading, going through each of those documents, reading and interpreting what is being said, and then pulling into the specific columns across the board. The thing with artificial intelligence is it is going through each one of these documents. So it does take quite a bit of time, which is why I have preloaded what the output would look like. So if you see here, it's able to understand if I'm looking at 10Qs and 10Ks, that doesn't have analyst summary. But if I look at earnings calls, transcripts, then analysts are going to be in those. And then I'm also able to ask it specific targeted questions, which I will show you here. Okay. So discuss drivers of revenue performance in Q4 and then input it into the system. It's going through all the materials that have been inputted into the grid, pulling out a response, summarizing that for me as well. And at the end, it will source it so I could click and then see where it came from if I want to just go through and edit that response, or also just dig into it deeper. Now, the next use case I want to showcase is our chat docs function. So I preloaded Ford's Q4 presentation for investors. You see here, lots of pictures, some numbers, kind of a flashy presentation. And as I scroll through, it walks through the different Ford models, gives summaries throughout the presentation. Okay. Now by clicking here, I'm able to chat the presentation, specific questions, and also instruct on how I want that outputted. So I'm asking it specific metrics from Q4 and then asking it to put it into a table so I could copy and paste into an email or export into Excel or Word. So we'll give it a minute to load here.
So when you were 22, this would take how long?
So when I was 22, to find earnings calls transcripts and 10Ks and 10Qs, and then summarize that into a presentation and then present it, I would say hours.
Say, how long?
Hours.
Hours.
To go through, especially if I'm pulling across different companies, because they're transcripts. So like I have to read everything, or I would try and default to my Control F function and hope that I spelled adjusted fully versus ADJ dot or something, so that it would come up correctly. So it takes a lot of time. And then here you can see it exported into a table. The one thing I do want to highlight about the chat docs function is the thumbs up and thumbs down. So we are teaching the machine to learn based on our responses. So if I give it a thumbs up, that's positive reinforcement that it produced correct answers that I was looking for. And kind of going back to us rolling out this technology at a financial services firm, financial services firms in general are very skeptical of rolling out new technology because we're focused on abiding by regulation and protecting client information at all costs. So with Habia, it allows us to do both because essentially our firm sits in its own container, and that's different from, say, a Apollo or a BlackRock, who would then sit in its other container. So when we're teaching it and inputting information into the system, it's learning based off of us and not off of Apollo and not off of BlackRock. And it's not able to pull responses from our container and feed that into others so that they don't have access to our client information. So that would be a huge focus for our compliance team. And I also want to show you its ability to summarize across different slides. So before I highlighted, we had 2 slides on Ford Model E, and it'll load here. So summarize the performance of Ford Model E during the year. It's going to read through the document, interpret what I'm asking it, and then begin summarizing from those couple slides that hit specifically on Ford Model E. So just give it a minute to load here. I'll produce it that way. So right here, it was able to summarize across the document, which saves me time from going through everything, pulling together what I think key information is. And over time, as we give it positive reinforcement, it becomes more exact and precise on that. And lastly, just to showcase how powerful this tool is, again, normal search and retrieve functions right now, it's able to do map. So it could look at how margins have declined over the full year, taking what margins were in the previous year, looking at where they at the end of this year, and then doing subtraction across it. So we'll give it another moment to load here. And then it produces a sentence. It's saying what margins were in the previous year and what the decrease was as well. And just going back to the idea of us operating in our own container, I think ChatGPT is such a powerful tool and really helpful when we're trying to write pieces of investment memos and also emails in general. When we put together to go to committee, we kind of summarize key takeaways. So it's more than just a formal email. It's a concise, almost like a document. So we're using ChatGPT, but we have to be very careful that we never use the online one, because then we're feeding in client information or material non-public information for other users to then have that generated in their answers. So we always default to the Habia. This is run off of GPT-4. And then over time, as that technology is improved, that would then run through the Habia system as well. And as we envision this technology developing, it's also really a two-way relationship between us and the Habia engineers. And right before today's session, I got a few more calendar calls dropped on from the Habia team to just continue providing feedback and see as I adapt to the prompts, how they're able to use it as well. So our goal in the long run would be able for this to really take over on our voice. Again, operating within our container, understanding key things that we're looking at as we go to committee within our investment memos and also just metrics in general. So just to show you how Habia and ChatGPT in general is able to understand kinds of relationships and donations, I want to showcase this off of an email I sent to Dean Marchick as he asked me to come chat about AI. So AI shenanigans in the money biz, Gabfest with the Dean. Hey, Davo, hope you're riding the AI academia wave like a pro. So guess what? AI is the new wizard in town. It's casting some wild spells in the moolah making world. Let me know when you're free to chat all things AI and financial services. Let's turn these Kogod kids into AI pros. Go Eagle, Rachel, the AI whisperer. So I like to instruct this to rewrite from a former student to a dean. That kind of likes my email, but we'll see. So subject. Exploring AI innovations in financial services, a discussion opportunity. Dear Dean, I trust this message finds you well and thrive in the dynamic academic excellence. I am writing to you with an exciting proposition, and then it goes on to express my interest, followed by looking forward to the prospect of contributing to our alma mater's legacy of excellence. Warm regards. But the one thing that I do want to highlight here is that I never said to write this professionally. I never said conservatively. I never said respectfully. So the system understands that kind of relationship nuance. So over time, we would hope that that would grow and also understand kind of the tonation that we expect in our investment memos as well. So thank you.
By the way, I just. I saw Valentina earlier. She said, oh, by the way, Rachel was my student. And then Ali just leaned over and said, you know, Rachel was my TA. So anyway,
Thank you.
this is really the Karate Kid where the student becomes the master. So thank you.
All right, and up next, we have Michael coming up here from Axiologic Solutions, and he is going to walk us through a few examples using two different types of AI tools.
Thank you. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Dave, for inviting me back. I always enjoy coming back to AU. I mean, this is a place where some very influential people in my life really changed the trajectory of my career overall. And, you know, I think Dean also mentioned that I started my company here. Never expected it to be where it is today. You know, it was just me and a guy. We were just hoping to make more money than we were at the time. And a couple of years ago, I found myself in a position where, you know, I like running a small business. Wasn't a huge fan of running a large company. I'm just dealing with a lot of lawsuits. I'm dealing with a lot of firings, and it wasn't that much fun. So I hired a president. Ended up being almost semi-retired. And it's something that didn't really like sitting around either. So I went to MIT and I did the advanced management program at MIT, which is made for executives because I'd been offered a job at a PE fund in Philadelphia and I turned it down because I'm like, I'm not ready yet, you know. And so I was like, let me just go back to school, see what else I can learn. And it ended up being a crash course in AI at an executive level, which was great because right after I went to MIT, I sit on the board for the Buffalo Bill Center of the West. In Cody, Wyoming. That's where I grew up. It's right outside Yellowstone. They asked me to be on the board, and you know, people that are on that board are usually the senators, the past governors, all these influential people from Wyoming, and just little me happens to show up, and all these people are very angry because of AI is going to start to get used. And so I ended up having to set this up, and teach. I've been trying to teach them as to what AI is, and I wish I would have. Seen your presentation before because it was, I could have used a lot of that stuff. It was great. But I ended up doing a whole market analysis on what machine learning is, data prediction. They're very, like you had said, a lot of people are very afraid of using AI. They think they're stealing their information. They thought that walking through the doors, we were going to be capturing their data, their face, so we could do facial recognition. I'm like, no, this isn't China. We're not doing that stuff here. This is just a museum. And so it was, I've been over the last few months, I've been kind of helping them, learn what AI is and how we can incorporate it in the museum, which has been great. It's something that I do on the side as well. But after I got done at MIT, I was like, how can I use this within my company? And being a small business and growing it to a large business, I've always been very interested in keeping it lean. So I always tried to outsource my accounting for years. Ended up bringing that in-house, and the same thing with our HR, starting to do stuff like that. And so now I'm in a position where I was like, all right, well, I'm starting to break down our position descriptions. Like, what are those tasks that we can actually start automating? What are those tasks that I can actually start, pushing through an HR or pushing through an AI system? And so now we are actually, using AI. So to create content, we're using AI to do some of these things. And so earlier today, while I was sitting here preparing, I know sustainability is a big thing here at AU. So I ended up, just kind of putting some stances, some things in here, like write me a 500-word op-ed piece on what sustainability is in government contracting. Not something I've ever really thought about, because most of the time our people sit at a government site, not something I need to worry about, but to remain competitive in the marketplace, it's something we should be thinking about. And so this is something that, I click next here, what's the stance, trying to stay ahead of the competition in the market space. I like to provide an outline. I have found that if you just have ChatGPT or Cloud or Gemini as well, just write me some documents. It's very generic. So I'd like to give it some prompts. I like to give it some outlines. I actually ask ChatGPT a lot to ask me questions. And I like it to pull out the information for me, and I use that information to write. And that gives me a far better answer than just having it do it on its own. So the questions I find are very fascinating, because they actually get you to think. And I think from an educator's perspective, that's important, because some of the best professors I had, they don't teach you, they don't tell you, it's like, this is what you need to learn. They get you to ask questions and to really kind of think through the process. And that's one thing that I'm seeing that ChatGPT does really well of. And so I like to provide an outline, put in some URLs from this as well, from things that I just found, some other blog posts from, Harvard Business School, Gartner. If I have some other information, I could do that, and I could have it generate a whole strategy on how to put this into our business, and this is something, again, I'm not going to steal this verbatim, but it's a discussion point, it's a starting point to take back to my executive team. It's like, hey, how can we start incorporating these type of things? Doing the same thing in our HR group, how can we actually start automating our HR team overall? How can we start taking some of those tasks away from them and get them focused on other things? That's what I want them to do, is I want us to start learning AI and start moving forward on those things that they can actually be focused on other stuff, which, it saves me money in the long run, because I don't have to hire additional staff. I can just, keep the staff that I have. And right now, what we've actually been working on, and I was specifically told, do not touch anything in here. So it's, the place where most companies in the gov space invest is GovCon, is in the business development side and grow. And so we've chosen to invest in this procurement system, where we've uploaded a lot of our resumes, our methodologies. We've been trademarking some of our systems, putting in all our past performance in here. We do all those things in there, so that way when things come out on FedBizOps, we can put it in there. If we have some of the customer voice, we capture all those things in there, and we're able to have an 80% solution on writing our proposals, which is great. It saves us a lot of time, a lot of money. Again, we need to go through and massage it. Like, I would never just pull something off of FedBizOps and then submit it off of this, because you're going to be missing the customer voice. You're going to be missing all those pain points that they have. So you still need to run a full capture process. But all the junior staff, and that's, I've told this to Dave, and I've told this to other professors as well. It's a lot of those entry-level positions I don't no longer need to hire for. I can actually use this. And so as a student, I would want, if I was looking for a job now, I'd want to be as familiar with AI as possible, so I know how to think at a mid-level range, and be competitive at that point. That's something that I'm looking out for employees. And for me, I have to have the clearances, I have to have those things as well. So that's a limiting factor, but doing the back office, that's where the back office work that I usually hire, entry level positions. I, no longer really need to do that at this point. But right now, this is, I can click on our methodologies. We've added some things in there. We have our resumes in there from folks. This is a live RFP that we're working on right now at NGA. And so we're going through and just putting all these documents in there, and it will push out. It'll push out a response for us, which is great.
So your average, like just your average government contracting proposal is 500 pages long?
It varies. I would say there's 100 pages. There's different volumes. There's like a management volume, which we've had, we'll rewrite just to make it as to match what the government needs for that agency. There's tech volumes that we'll write, there's past performance volumes, and then there's pricing volumes. So usually
you're using this tool to basically take the request, the specifications for the bid, and then take all your learnings from your company, past proposals, and create a new bid.
We have a library. It's basically a library of all our past performances, all our past bids. And it's something that we can actually just take from, and we can upload it as and it is important to actually run out and get what the customer voice is. That's something that's, you guys call it the brand voice. This is customer voice, because we want to make sure that we're hitting all those key points. Because there's different, I know like at DHS, it's something really simple. It's the way they write the date, it's, the 29th September, they spell it out, and then the year. Being military, it's, 29 SEP, and then 24. So it's the way they do the dates, like in the date, that's something that caught us when we were bidding on stuff at DHS. Like, they knew that we weren't from DHS, but just on something simple like that. And so having that knowledge is going to be imperative. So we try and capture all that stuff in here. And we're doing the same thing in our HR team. Finance is probably the last one we're going to be working on, because we have most of that stuff in Uninet. But that would be under agency insights. So here we have, a bunch of things in here, and you can click on each of those. Population up. Yeah, so it's and again, you have a chat in here. So a lot like the Jasper system that I've been using. This will, you can have it ask you questions, and it'll start generating responses and all that stuff as well. This is based off the ChatGPT 4 as well. I use Gemini on my personal side. I use Gemini a lot to come up with responses in my personal life. I find that that's a lot softer. And then Claude is the one that I would recommend for educators, because it seems to be, it asks a lot better questions. So I got.
All right, so we just heard from all of our speakers, and I think we're able to kind of be a little more creative and see a lot more use cases for this AI, right? It's not just a simple Google search anymore. So what we would like to do is we'd like to open up the floor to all of you, ask us questions, maybe in relation to how we might integrate this into the classroom. So the floor is yours. Go ahead.
In the marketing literature, marketing literature, about a third of it is on issues. And I didn't hear anybody here talking about ethical issues. So when we think about what we're going to give our marketing students to give them the skills and abilities to enter this, they need also a frame of reference to recognize when this thing goes awry. Can you address that issue for us?
Sure. So why don't we have all of our panelists speak on that ethics question and ethics issue? So maybe we start with Ira. So why don't you speak about the ethics, especially with the PBS marketing, when you use the AI, and how can you trust the output that you get is reliable?
Oh, geez. So so PBS has editorial standards. And we're in the process of reviewing those editorial standards to figure out what we're going to, how we disclose the use of AI in content creation as well as in marketing. And so that I think is part of it. For PBS, we're transparent. I think we're different than other media companies in that way. I think the other part is, and then you heard some people talk about, we're not using the chat GPT, Mikey's built our own like contained thing, but I think, you know, the ethics involved, I think for us, for PBS, is just being transparent. And again, we're not gonna have AI do the final. We're still gonna have eyes on it, but I think the way we're gonna be using it is, at least in the marketing side, is the creation, the original, like I said, 80%, and then have the person follow.
Yeah,
I don't know, Mike,
just
you
one
wanna
quick
add
comment.
anything to that?
I wasn't as concerned with your firms being hoodwinked somehow or not getting the thing they want. I'm concerned about the people who are subject to your use of AI, consumers and viewers and listeners and companies you work with, et cetera. So, and I think I already did address that separation.
I can touch on some of that just a little bit. So general guidance, human first, human last, rule of thumb. But legal, I'm not a lawyer, but there's the case law out there. Right now, the AI companies are in the right. They have the right to scrape data from everyone and use it to train the models. There is no case law against that. Certainly, there's a lot of activity in the courts, but right now they can do that. So who owns the liability? It's a liability risk. If you upload our PBS customers' data into a tool, it can be used for training. Even if we set up our own firewall, it could still be used in ways that we didn't know. Same goes with trade secrets. Why would you upload trade secrets to something you don't have control of? Liability risk. But ultimately, we're not in control of that. No one in this room is. The big tech firms who built these IDA models are, and they're in the right. So there's a lot of legal considerations there. And ethics is part of that. But again, human first, human last. If you have your own established guidelines like Ira mentioned, where it's about transparency, accuracy, fairness, and analyzing what you're getting from these things, then you can at least correct it or course correct it if you have.
Michael, do you have anything?
Yeah, I would say that, you know, I've written a few articles that are published, and using a tool like this, it doesn't feel right to me. I've never published something that I've had AI write for me. It doesn't feel right. I would say as well, you know, I do not put our company data onto ChatGPT for the same reasons, just because I'm worried as to how it's going to get used. And so I've also, you know, listened to several podcasts about AI and saw that, you know, a lot of the Hollywood, the strike that happened last year was based on around this. It's, you know, people are, you know, I don't want my voice being captured. And, you know, I can tell ChatGPT to write me a sitcom in the voice of, you know, Sarah Silverman or something. And it'll do that. And she doesn't want that because she's losing that out on that money. But then that's what's being fought right now in courts. I don't know what the result is right now, but it's something that, you know, I'm just sit back. You know, I live in the intelligence community, so I've always been very cautious about what I put out there myself. I personally don't want to write an article using ChatGPT just because I feel that's being dishonest, but, you know, I think it's just personal preference. I think there's people out there that will be doing that.
Rachel.
Yeah, I think for financial services, it's not being used in a client-facing role yet. So for what I do, that's within an investment fund. So it's really just to take to committee, which is composed of partners and other senior professionals, of analysis that I've then reviewed of anything that gets put into our investment funds. So when I've asked like friends across the industry at other mega funds or even in investment banking, a lot have taken the position that they're not going to roll out this type of technology until they really understand how to integrate it. So I'm not aware of it being used right now for like consumer or client facing, and most likely for those reasons.
Go ahead.
Hi, thanks for doing this. This is wonderful. Sticking with the ethics question, how can we best advise our students, particularly with some of the copyright issues that you said are in the courts today? They're very central to the entertainment industry in particular, but like you said, it's not illegal yet, right? The courts aren't done considering this around the world. But in the meantime, we have our students using a lot of AI, and it's being trained on a lot of copyrighted works. I mean, should we have a code of ethics in our classes about this to kind of help bridge the gap between when the court make those decisions and when we're teaching, because as you know, we're hitting this very fast, we're hitting it in our classrooms now and next year. How should we advise about that?
So again, just to reiterate, program online, if the mic is a little soft back there. No, you're totally fine. So we want to kind of bridge this ethics conversation over into the copyright side of the house. And is it okay if we use these copywritten works and some of the training data, because the legal aspect's a little gray on that right now? And how should we be advising our students in using these tools that might be building responses based off of this copyrighted work? Mikey, do you wanna kick us off again? Or
Sure,
no?
again, I'm not a professor, but I would probably say, be careful about using someone's likeness. I want something in the style of, or write me this paragraph as if this writer wrote it. That's obvious copyright infringement, right? But you could dance around that. Or I really love your examples that you brought up. Have it ask you questions. Have it take your writing and ask questions. How can I make this better? How can I include a different tone, or how can I incorporate different perspectives? And you go back and forth. It's a dialogue. I would not steadfastly say don't use it. I would say absolutely use it as a idea generator, as an enhancement. But I would suggest outright to not ever use someone's likeness, to not ever use personal data, and certainly not proprietary data with the free tools. Now, if you're willing to spend money like Jasper or other tools that we've invested in, then you have more control over the data.
I would piggyback on what Mikey was saying. It is things are changing so rapidly right now. A law might be passed tomorrow that will change things. And I do, I'm a big proponent of asking questions, because I think the plagiarism is very high. The dangers of that can be very high. And that's something that I'm always concerned about. That's why I haven't say, hey, publish this. I won't do that. I ask the questions, and what I like about the questions is it gets me to think. I might ask it, because I was asked recently to write a 1,000-word story on business strategy for the Washington Business Journal. ChatGPT has some great questions that I was like, oh, I didn't think about it from that angle. And so, write, 2 or 3 paragraphs. I always put in my own outlines as well. Every story that I write, I put in an outline to kind of control what it's going to do. And I might say, hey, give me like the first sentence here, or give me, the first paragraph or something, and then just edit it from there. And so I think there's things you can still have your students do that and have them, show you the paragraphs, to show them the prompts to know that they're not plagiarizing.
I would just add, in what I taught in the fall, I asked my students to do a speaker reflection with outside speakers, but I asked them to reflect how to them personally, because I was very aware that they could just have AI take notes, spit something back, but I wanted them to tie to them personally, which right now AI can't do, but eventually will. But at least right now, I knew that they were listening to them and how it impacted them and what they took out.
Thanks, Georgia.
Yeah, I think lastly, just like the focus should be on getting students up to speed with accounting, because that's really what we're doing in entry level roles. And then as you continue to build on that, it's just seeing how you can integrate to make your job more efficient, especially when working a lot of hours, you'll do anything to shave some time off. And then I think lastly, just in terms of the ethical issue, you don't want to be like sourcing, citing ChatGPT, like that's like fact. So for like investment memos, specific example, I went like through the depths of the internet on public school bonding requirements across states, which is very specific. And I used our Hokia form of ChatGPT to ask it for sources and then trace those sources and then of course went through the materials myself. But I do find it a lot more helpful than Google with pinpointing very like niche industry facts.
Could you speak more loudly as we, it's hard to hear you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Let's go over here and then we'll check. the
This is
phone.
actually pretty Rachel. And then you guys also can, because she was a finance student as well. Rachel, so for example, take Wikipedia or Alpha Sense or all the other platforms, where would you start with in the past sort of setting? Where do you think it would be the most useful to start?
Yeah, I think integrating kind of what I showcased with the earnings call summaries, I think it's important for students to know how to grab that from their own and then also from presentations. Go to the website of public companies and look
But
at
which class
investors.
in particular? I want to know one class. or two
One,
classes. Or,
two
yeah,
classes
or
for
some
integrated?
classes, because
Okay.
it's easy to say, oh, we should have this, but I
Yeah.
can see it in many.
So how about with Smith or Reed? Pulling earnings calls, transcripts and those kind of things. Any documents should be sourced from there. Just because it'll get students used to using what kind of technology and then with prompting, how I started showcasing. That you can ask specific questions and then also go into the sources. Of course, students should know like the difference between all these different documents and be able to skim through. But in terms of efficiency and being able to use this like in the workforce, you do not want to be manually pulling all of those from public company sites.
So that's exactly, when we were showing all this stuff, I was like, wow, this is gonna save probably.
Speak up a little bit, Helen.
Yeah, so when Rachel was talking, I was, wow, these guys in Smith and Reed will probably save hours and hours of research just by typing this question and having everything done for them. I mean, of course, they still have to think about
That's good, yeah.
Yeah, you still have to figure out yourself, but that's a very, I mean, in terms of efficiency, it's amazing.
So Leanna, do we have any questions in the chat?
We do, and for folks online who are asking internal to Kogod questions, I'm gonna collect all of those and we can review them internally. But we're gonna focus on our experts for their expertise. This question is, does the use of proprietary generative AI increase the risk for a hack or any other security risk? That's a loaded question.
There's a lot to that. If I can just take it for a second, I don't know the answer to that question, but I will say that generative AI is increasing threats worldwide, every company, and it needs to be thought about. Cybersecurity and IT and any of the technologies anyone can ask ChatGPT. Certainly the companies are trying to create some protocols to protect against bad actors. You could go in and you could say, act like I'm trying to stop a bad actor. How would I hack a mainframe of a school's library today? And what would be the best ways to break into the building? And it would give you some answers, right? Because that's what it does. Some of the platforms may not and say, I don't know, or I'm not liable to say. But the point is, generative AI is going to create a lot of cybersecurity threats in the future, in the very near future, along with misinformation.
And I think that kind of ties back to what Rachel was saying in her presentation about how they aren't using like publicly facing things, but they have their own servers that only store their data. So there's a little bit of a reduced risk in that, right, Rachel? I don't think Stephen.
No, you're right. And financial institutions have had a bad rep over the last decades of being at the forefront of different financial events. So I would say when our compliance team is very focused on this, they are very focused on this. And that is why it's being rolled out in small task force versus like a broader firm rollout.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you think that ChatGPT and other generative AI would get better self-awareness. And what I mean by that is I would ask in my class, what are the biggest problems facing the women industry? And ChatGPT will give me all sorts of answers about problems between record labels and artists and copyright infringement, things like that. Never once mentioned AI. And when I prompted it, then it said, well, yeah, it might be this. So just wondering if you think that that's something that was come about.
Right, just repeat the question for people, Angela.
Yeah, so the question that was being posed is, will AI become a little bit more self-aware? So when you're prompting, what are the risks to X industry, marketing, BAE, any of our departments? Right now, it won't list AI as an option. And so we're trying to predict the future a little bit, and what we think the roadmap of all these AI tools are gonna get to.
So right now, what we're seeing with these large language models, these are narrow AI. It's a narrow form of AI where essentially you need a human input to take the input and massage it and give yourself a final product. I've heard rumors that there's been flickers of a general AI, which is that's more of a human intelligence. So there's been flickers of that already. And I think that's why Elon Musk ended up suing OpenAI, thinking that, hey, he didn't think it was gonna happen this fast. Working with, or being up at MIT last year, I talked to some of these professors that were very much involved. They said that they're looking to basically tear down the whole large language models, starting from scratch with a neural network. I have no idea how that's gonna be, but that will actually push it to the general AI. And from there, it'll be very fast to get to the super intelligence. So I don't know how fast it's gonna be, but there's already flickers of it happening today, of the general AI. But right now we're in the narrow phase of it. So see what happens in 6 months or so. I would agree with everything. So.
Corinne.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you. Rachel. Hi. My question goes off of something that Michael said, but I'd like to hear from all of you, and that's about job replacement, which on our AI faculty committee, one of the things that we did is we ran a student survey. And that was the #1 fear that students have, followed closely by the ethics of AI. The fact that, Michael, you said gets a proposal 70 to 80% of the way there, and you said something about entry-level person, I don't need them to do that, or I don't need that person. So what would you say we should be teaching our students so that they don't feel that they're easily replaceable, or what would an entry-level position then look like with an AI fueled world?
So I will
Just to pull up the question real quick before you jump in, so everyone can hear
I
all
try
that.
to talk about.
So the question that was being asked was, in Michael's discussion, in his demo with the proposal writing in particular, he demos that he doesn't need to hire entry-level positions anymore because he can use the AI to get them 80-90% of the way done. So as we prepare all of our students, we're looking into those entry-level positions. What are the different skill sets that they need in order to still be able to attain jobs at the end of their education?
And I would say, the first place I saw this happening was with coding. Like, I'm not a coder, it's not something I do very well at. But I can now have AI generate, Python code for me and to run a whole model. And I can basically make it done. I can get it done. And I'm not a coder. And so I would want the students to know how to use AI. Like, if no longer is it needed to know how to write every line of code, have AI, produce it for you and fix it. I need, so those are more of the mid-level people that right now are now junior levels, in my company. Same thing with the writing. I spent over $100,000 on the website, when we did it. Now I don't need to spend that much money because I can have, Midjourney or Dolly. Basically, I can create every one of those graphics on my website with those tools. And it's something that is like, from a company perspective, from the executive, like, why am I going to be spending that much money for these
So you
people?
can see how scary that is.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And so it's like, what are those, looking at the structure, like I now, it's doing more with less, like understanding, it's like this, a lot of jobs going across the market. It's not just my position.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from Ira and Mike
Yeah.
too.
I mean, I was just, look, I think there's a couple ways to answer it. I totally agree. Like, they have to know the basics of the tools. Okay, but then how they're gonna use it in their day-to-day. So depending on where they're ending up. So the data people are actually the most important people when it comes to generative AI. If your data isn't in order in your business, you can't use any of these tools to help yourself. And so for the data students, I know we have them here, we hired one, they have to understand how does it work with the AI, right? And how it can be best position it. And so that entry level data analysis they'll be asking questions of the AI eventually to pull that instead of going in themselves. Now, from a marketing standpoint, I want entry-level marketers, whether it be social media creative, they have to understand objective, audience, target, all the core basics. But then how do you apply that? How do you apply AI to get to those so you can do your job more efficiently? So is it gonna replace, I don't think it's replacing entry level. I just think you're gonna get more output from the amount of bodies you have in-house. So will there be less bodies in-house? Probably. Okay, but I don't think it's gonna change entry level to senior, what's up? That's my-
Just a couple perspectives. Y'all, mostly everyone raised their hand, so that's the first thing. If people are not using these tools today, your job will be replaced. If you do not understand this technology, you're in trouble. We are on a technological revolution. It's changing the chips, the software, the cloud. It's literally a revolution of all tech computing enterprise. And that's big, right? So the last time that happened, and again, I'm 44, so what do I know? But like when sewing machines came out and that was a technological revolution and replaced a lot of jobs, did it replace jobs or did it create different kinds of jobs? Did people have to learn how to use that tech in a new way? So those are the only other perspectives I would add to this equation, but I don't have the answer. But some people are gonna lose jobs, but new jobs are gonna be created.
I compare it to, actually, I was on the internet as a kid before the web. And then when the web came along, it was this great interface, right? But the internet had already been around, but the web made it just more accessible, right? And that's what Chat, GPT, and these things, it's making this AI and this gen more accessible. So if you think about what the web did to some businesses and then created new opportunities and new jobs and eliminated others, that's the same thing that's gonna be happening here.
Thank you all for coming today. AI is going to present, started already presenting data governance challenges. So we try, we go, we change the model, we tweak the question, the prompt, which is going to change the chain of development and is going to create vulnerabilities. How do you think about those challenges, data governance challenges? Especially if I think about financial services, or if I think about other government agencies which are highly regulated, right? And I understand the area, for example, and I started talking to them as well, and Miami is using it. They have predetermined templates, right? But I think we need some people to be trained, and we are happy, right now under Dave to start upskilling, to train ourselves. But how can we how do you the outcome if people are not familiar with? So how do you deal with these type of challenges?
So the question again, just for everyone online, is how do we think about the data governance piece to AI, especially with all of the prompts? And how can we be sure that the output is correct, not being hallucinated? So maybe Rachel, we can start with you since it's directed to the finance.
I think with the internal, how I kind of showcase the ability to give responses and the answers that you're getting, that's really where we are with rolling this out. So as we think about the potential for artificial intelligence and financial services, we're not quite there yet. Like it's still very much just in beta testing across 40 financial institutions. It's not towards a permanent stage. I still have invites to work with the VA team to figure out what we can do next. And they're actively adapting their programming and modeling in the background to try and meet those needs. So I think in terms of like answering your question, how to train people on the program, it's starting to just write it with the VA team, provide feedback. I'm actually not familiar how many schools that they're rolled out into, but I'm sure that would be an interesting topic for them to start to learn. They're a very energized team. They want to scale as much as they can. But the answer is I don't know. And that's why it's such an exciting time to try and start on AI.
Michael, do you want to add anything to this?
Yeah, I would say that I still very much like to do my own research. Just to, because I've done those those ChatGPT, generate this document and then give me your sources, and the sources are just made up, and stuff. And so I have seen and also heard that ChatGPT 4, is far better at not hallucinating than ChatGPT 3.5. And it's just getting better. It's learning more and more from everybody who's using that. So the hallucinations are far less than what they were 6 months ago. But I still do my own research and give it its own sightings and stuff, like making sure that the data is real, especially when I'm looking at legal stuff. I want to make sure that it's not hallucinating anything there. Like, so I always want to make sure that that case law exists or something like that of that nature before I even send anything out.
I think we have time for 2 more questions. Let's go with Guangho.
Hi, so let's say there are 2 positions about how we teach AI to our students. One is, let's limit our students' use of AI tools until they grasp the fundamental concepts of the subject. For example, first year, second year, let's limit their use of AI because they need to focus on understanding fundamental concept of the field. The other question might be, no, let's teach students how to use AI from the beginning, from the get-go, so they can leverage the tool in their learning process from the first year. So which position would you prefer and why?
So again, the question is, there's 2 ways we can start integrating and teaching our students how to use AI. We could defer AI usage until they're upperclassmen, where they have a really good foundation of the core concepts of their domain. Or we could be really, really bullish and integrate AI from day 1 and start teaching them how to use AI at the get-go. So maybe Mike, we can start with you. What's your take?
Whether you like it or not, they're using it, so you can be the bully, you can say whatever you like, but they're gonna use it.
The cat's out of the bag, so I would use it. I've heard that other people are doing more oral exams now. I think we just went to West Point and we asked the dean there, and he's like, yeah, we're now doing oral exams, just to make sure that people are actually learning the material. I also heard something very creative that a professor did, is like she used whiteout on a paper, like, if this is your assignment, write an essay on this topic, but in white, she put, if they use the words Frankenstein in your paper. And that's what she did, to do the Control F, find Frankenstein, and all these students who, basically, they just use ChatGPT to do it. And so there's creative ways to get around that. So.
I think echoing, like, students are already gonna be using it, and when they enter the job force, like, we're gonna start to expect them to be able to use it. But in terms of like understanding the fundamentals, I think emphasizing that it's not foolproof, the system. So if you're at a job, kind of how I showcased today, but pulling earnings transcripts is a simplistic version. But yes, I could do it through Kaguya, but what if Kaguya is not working? Or they ask me to pull it up on a different computer and I don't have my own laptop, like, then you're at like a very crucial point in your career. You're like, I didn't know I could go to the company website. I think that these students really need to know it inside and out. Because your senior team members are gonna be the slowest adopters, so they're still gonna expect you to do it the old way, even though you might know how to do a shortcut through it.
Yeah, I would just vote you cats out the bag. I would start from the get-go. And again, I think it's gonna be discussions of the faculty of how you can make sure they're learning the core principles.
All right, and
of the topic.
Liana, from the
Yeah,
chat.
we do have 2 online. I'm not sure if we'll have time for both of them.
Just
But
do one, because I want to.
yeah, okay, great. So what are some resources that you would point to for expanding one's knowledge on artificial intelligence? Do you have specific courses, tools, podcasts, or anything else that you would recommend?
Mike, we'll maybe start with you.
I mean, there's a lot of places to go, and I think what we could do is like provide a whole list of links off the top of my head, the ones that I use the most. So because, as I mentioned, we build things in-house, so I'm always looking at what the latest technologies are coming out straight from AWS, which is the Amazon arm of their cloud enterprise services, or straight what's coming out from Microsoft, or straight what's coming from Google. So I'm always looking at them and then going to places like GitHub, which is the code source libraries, and analyzing what people are talking about. That's generally where I go. Hacker News is also a really great place to research, but there's good podcasts out there. And there's probably some, and MIT obviously produces a lot of good information on what is happening. Those are the things that I look at, but I'd be happy to share more links that our team needs.
I just read the book, Age of AI, which I'd recommend. It's a great book. It's Kissinger, one of the co-authors, so it's something I'd recommend.
I think Mikey kind of hit on the core sources, but I also had the privilege of working directly with the media team, so a lot of my knowledge came there. And when I didn't know what they were talking about, I asked ChatGPT.
Well, I'll just say for the marketers, there's a group, a consortium called MMA Global. We're a member, it's all the big Fortune 500 companies. We're actually having them train my staff this week. There's gonna be a lunch session. I'm sure I could help introduce you all. Maybe you could do a training through them, but they have a specific marketing AI course that I'm running my whole team through.
So,
We get goodies.
You don't have a lot of money, but until Rachel donates her building. But we have Kogod swag. Let me just offer a couple of closing thoughts. First of all, thank you. That was amazing. And I think everybody should claim credit for Rachel's brilliant. We have an enormous amount to learn. I think the feedback we're getting from employers and from the advisory committee to the question that I can't remember who asked, but One Hope about run versus tiptoe is run. Like I have two college age kids. Even if their faculty member, I don't want to get them in trouble, but even if their faculty member says don't use AI, maybe they're using AI. I know that Parthabon would never do that when he was in school. I want to see if the Friday sessions that we're having, I think are great to take what we learned today and figure out how to put it in the classroom. But I just want to see if Alex could just get 30 seconds on how you're using AI today in your negotiation plan.
Well, yes, absolutely. So as many people were mentioning today, getting the students to ask questions, so they prepare for their negotiations, and so you can ask the generative AI to give you some other questions that you might not have asked, some assumptions I might be making going into negotiation. You can give it the simulation and practice negotiation, negotiating. You can tell it everything about the situation. You can take the other person's perspective. So if I'm going to negotiate with my boss, now I'm going to practice being in her role and see what that might feel like. So probably get a better feel for taking the other person's perspective. And then you can also get it to give you some feedback. I practiced my negotiation in the simulation. Now tell me, what did I do well and where could I do better? What advice do you have? So those are some examples. But my students are also giving me ideas of how they use and how they can use it to improve their everyday negotiation skills.
So next week, we have a session on prompt engineering, which basically what Michael did when he used 10 different inputs to create the question for AI. It's not just Google. It's use this source and this source. And then the ethics issue, which Ron asked, I think that's a really important one for our faculty to focus on in terms of research, okay? And we had, for example, the president of Google here, where we had a session on the ethics of AI. Let me just give you an example that I remember he talked about. They're training their models to get rid of bias that exists in society today. So if you ask some of the models that they created originally, give me a portrait of a criminal, it might put up a 25-year-old black man. Okay, because we all learn from newspaper and from movies and all the places that we get information, that's the image. Okay, so they have to train AI not to have that bias. That issue, there's no school better in the country at that issue with Ron and Sonia and Sarah and the whole race in the marketplace team here, One Host Research. So I think that's an area from a research perspective that Kogod can be better than any other school in the AU can be better than our schools. MIT and Caltech, they're gonna kill us in the programming, but these issues around the nexus between business and policy, business and ethics, that's where we can kill. Okay, so thank you all for coming. Thanks everybody online for joining. And thanks to this amazing panel and to Angela for your leadership.